Did Australia just insult King Charles? So this is a story that I've been watching develop over the day for maybe the last 12 hours, and I thought it would be a good one to discuss with you guys and give my thoughts on about this whole Australia visit and this insulting of King Charles over the reception that he will have when he arrives in the country. So the BBC put out quite an informative article that I'd like to go through with you and then discuss in a bit. So it says here, monarchists in Australia have accused the state premiers, so kind of the leaders of each federal state of Australia, of course it's a federal system, the premiers of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia and Tasmania have said they are unable to attend a reception in Canberra, the capital Australia, which is the beginning of the King's visit that starts later this week. So they are saying they will not be present at the reception, saying they're unable to attend. Now, the monarchists in Australia are saying that this is insulting to King Charles, that they won't be present, saying, quote, "I find it insulting." Bev MacArthur, that is, of the Australian Monarchist League. They go on to say they should just take off their Republican hats, make the short trip to Canberra, say hi and thank you for coming to Australia. Buckingham Palace is, of course, staying out of this. It's not commenting on the row, which is kind of a precedent that they don't get involved in these things. But the Australian states will all have representatives at the event, including their governors. And the King will also be formally welcomed by the country's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. So these premiers are kind of, think of them as like governors of US states. It's kind of federal state systems similar to that. But this visit, which has also reopened questions about whether Australia should become a republic, which would have an elected head of state rather than the king being the head of state there, which is the current constitutional monarchy system. And this so-called snub being at the reception was highlighted first by the Daily Mirror, and Bev MacArthur, this pro-monarchist campaigner and Liberal MP, the Liberals in Australia being the centre-right party, which might come across as confusing. Many people in the US system see Liberal as a left-wing thing, but they are the right-wing party in the Australian system. They told ABC News Radio that it was an insult that state premiers were not going to the reception next Monday, saying, quote, "The failure of state premiers to attend the reception in Canberra is completely indefensible," telling the BBC, and accusing them of gesture-led politics. Welcoming the King and Queen to Australia is the least they can do as the most senior elected representatives of their states, she said. And then writing on social media, she said the King was being snubbed. Mrs. MacArthur was also unconvinced by the excuses from the regional heads of government, which included having other commitments and meetings that day, telling the BBC it was petty and inhospitable. The Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, cannot go, she says, as she's tied up with other government business, but in a recent press conference said she was very pleased that King Charles is visiting Australia. So it's kind of this balance of making the effort to come to Canberra, the capital, and welcoming the King officially, and kind of getting on with other government business. But then they are saying, the monarchists are saying, why are you not prioritising the head of state visiting Australia, which is quite a rare thing. Obviously it's very far away, and this constitutional monarchist system with King Charles as head of state is a very important visit. And that premier, the one of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, who I just talked about, she said about her view on Australia becoming a republic, she said it was something that she would support, but is not something that is a top priority for her right now. And all of these premiers, I believe, do support that view as well. The Premier's deputy will not be going either, though, so the state will be represented by the Governor, Professor Margaret Gardiner. Mrs. MacArthur, speaking on behalf of the Australian Monarchist League again, said that constitutional monarchy offered a very stable system of government, and that an elected president would mean just another layer of government and bureaucracy and have that partisan element to it too. She said that the latest polling on Australia showed more people still wanted to be a constitutional monarchy than a republic, but the Australian Republic movement, their kind of rival in that way, is calling for an end to the King's role as Australia's head of state, and has also called the royal visit the monarchy's farewell tour, so being a bit petty there, saying that it's time for them to elect a local to serve as their head of state, someone who can work for Australia full time. So you've got a whole range of views. Obviously, I completely support the monarchist system. I think constitutional monarchy is the best system of government, a royal that can be above the kind of petty partisan politics and be that leader that people can rally around even in hard times. But in an exchange of letters with the Australian Republic movement, the King has actually confirmed that whether Australia becomes a republic or not is a matter for the Australian public to decide, with the visit to Australia being the King's biggest trip since, of course, his cancer diagnosis earlier this year, with his treatment expected to be paused during this trip. And then after the Australian leg of the trip, the King and Queen will also travel to Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, so that will be amazing to see as well. And of course, recently we saw that amazing dancing video that will demonstrate how the King will be welcomed to Samoa that I went over a few days ago. I think it was last week. That amazing Samoan singing and dancing session that the King got involved with and busted a few moves as well. So that is the kind of rundown on this insult over the reception, and my basic view on this is that I do think it is a little bit of an insult to not attend the King's welcome ceremony here. Despite your views on whether he should be the head of state in the future, he is still the head of state now, and the least they could do, as they say, as the highest representatives of their states, is to attend this welcome ceremony. I feel like the states are not getting represented fully if their actual representatives are not present at this event, and many of the people, of course, in those states will be pro-monarchist. So it is a very interesting situation coming out, and has actually got quite big headlines. As I say, this is a BBC article, and it was fairly high up on the priority list on the BBC's website as well. And to be honest, I do find the campaign that the Australian Republican movement has launched, branding King Charles's visit to Australia as the farewell tour and launching this line of merchandise on t-shirts, they say aiming to spark a debate about the role of the Crown in modern Australia, but really it's just kind of this tongue-in-cheek kind of offensive thing to spark up some controversy to get their name out there. So I do think that's a little bit offensive to the role of the head of state itself, so it's kind of disrespectful in that way. But again, they are just satirical, so I don't imagine people are taking them too seriously. They're kind of depicting King Charles and Queen Camilla as these rock stars and urging Australians to wave goodbye to royal reign. But again, the polls are in the monarchists' favour at the moment, still in Australia. So yes, what do you think about this whole situation? Get your comments in down below. If you're from Australia, definitely get your comments in. I'd love to read those. Differing sides of it, definitely I'd love to hear those. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I will see you in the next video.